Hello everyone, my name is Felicia Mburu and I'm an associate with the African Institute of Children's Studies. I specifically provide training on mental health and the law, and today we'll be providing you with a sensitization training on human rights approaches to mental health in emergencies. And the whole goal of this training today is to create awareness on how to deal with mental health issues during an emergency. And we're not restricting it to medical emergencies, we're looking at emergencies generally. We have 3 goals for this sensitivity training. The first goal is to provide basic knowledge and understanding on mental health, mental disability, and mental health rights in the context of an emergency. The second goal is to understand how to include human rights approaches and standards in the provision of mental health services during an emergency. And the final goal is to provide practical ideas on how one can actually provide human rights services during an emergency. The first part of the class is to give us a basic understanding of human rights approaches to mental health, mental disability, and mental health rights. And for that, we have to understand basic words. For instance, I'm guessing a lot of you are health rights professionals and you have different languages to mean different things. You might use words like mental disorders, mental illness, which, by the way, are all against the human rights principles. So for purposes of this class and this training, we will be using more human rights friendly terms such as persons with psychosocial disabilities, persons with intellectual disabilities, mental health, mental capacity, emergencies, and who is a health worker. Psychosocial disabilities recognize the interaction between the mental state of the person and the society they live in, and how this can contribute to mental wellness of a person. This has been recognized by the Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disability as a human rights friendly term, and persons with psychosocial disabilities will technically include people who have, for instance, schizophrenia, bipolar, and such like mood disorders. Persons with intellectual disability refers to people who are born with significant limitations in their intellectual and cognitive functioning, and that way how they process information will be quite different from how we process information. This includes people who have, for instance, Down syndrome, people who have cerebral palsy, and this is argumentative. Some people on the spectrum can also fall under the intellectual disability category. These words are not set in stone. They are not exclusive, but the key thing to remember is that how a person defines themselves is what matters, not how you define their conditions. But for purposes of this training, we will be strictly using the words psychosocial disabilities or intellectual disabilities. And the key point here is to remember to always use human rights friendly language, and that means ask the person how they would like to be identified, and that is the term that you will continue using when referring to the person. The second issue is, what is mental health? Unlike the current constituents we work with, who are purely people who have different conditions and they've already been diagnosed, mental health refers to the general public and your mental well-being. So this is a general word not limiting to our constituents, but to every person in the public. And this is crucial, especially in emergencies, because emergencies impact people in different ways and can cause a form of mental disability. Then we have the word mental capacity. This is crucial because the public has a general misunderstanding of mental health and disability. When we talk about mental capacity, everyone has mental capacity. It's how you think, how you reason, how you live your life on a day-to-day basis. And mental capacity varies depending on your age, your sex, your gender, your society. There are so many variables that determine mental capacity, including even education. So we should never judge anyone on the basis of their mental capacity, because we are all different, we are all unique. And then we have emergencies. Now, the reason why I've put this word here on the board is because emergencies vary. While I know right now everyone is busy worried about the COVID-19 pandemic, we are looking at a bigger picture of emergencies outside of the pandemic. COVID-19 has come to just teach us a lesson of the gaps we had been ignoring for a long time. But in our context, we're defining emergencies to include wars, famine, droughts, pandemics, and such other things that affect Africa on a regular basis. So mental health should not just be limited to the pandemic we're facing now, but whatever lessons we are learning at the moment, we can use them in our future emergencies because they will always exist. And then we have the definition of a health worker. In mental health, unfortunately, health worker has always been limited to a psychiatrist. And this is because of the limited knowledge people have about mental health. So when you look at mental health workers, our definition is much wider than the psychiatrist because different workers provide different services depending on the mental disability we are looking at. We might have a psychiatrist, you might have a psychologist, we have occupational therapists, speech therapists, and even teachers to some extent play a role in our mental health. And the most important person is the person with a mental disability and their caregivers. Traditionally, we've always thought that mental health needs to be dealt with in a hospital. But if you look at it from a psychosocial perspective, mental health is how you live your daily life and also the hospital setting. So you need to bring these two together. So a health worker will include a variety of service providers, not just the psychiatrist. So far, these are the definitions that we are restricting, particularly to this training because they'll come up over and over again. However, you have been provided with course materials and further reading where you can get more definitions for your own interest and to be able to fit that into your own context. Now we will move on to the next session, which is talking about the human rights approaches and standards.